It's another villain too stupid to win, and our first AI contender, all the more relevant considering the looming threat of so-called artificial intelligence. But today we will prove that even in their most intelligent and malevolent state, we've got absolutely nothing to worry about. This guy is a total moron. It's Ultron from Avengers Age of Ultron. In a golden age before Thanos snapped away half the fun of the MCU, leaving us to endure the abject desolation of Phase 4, we were gifted a big bad palate cleanser in the form of Ultron and his so-called age. With S.H.I.E.L.D. left shattered after the events of the Winter Soldier, the Avengers have been busy mopping up the last remaining Hydra bases, eventually recovering the scepter. At which point Tony decides to fill the current power vacuum exclusively with his raging ego. Fearing another powerful external threat, he believes the only logical course of action is to create a new peacekeeping program that will render the Avengers obsolete.
I see a suit of armor around the world.
As if creating anything that could match the Avengers would ever be a good idea. Copying and pasting some alien code from this extremely powerful, unknown, and seemingly nefarious alien artifact. Predictably, the Mind Stone within the scepter influences the creation of Ultron, who, surprise surprise, ends up being a neurotic, robotic maniac, brought to life by James Spader playing himself.
I've come to save the world, but also...
Ultron born of an act of pure hubris and idiocy, so it's not surprising he comes to represent those qualities in abundance. Becoming evil just 1 minute after he gains self-awareness and committing to a path of human genocide. I guess Tony has never seen the Terminator franchise.
I understood that reference.
And so the stage is set for a conflict of the peak Marvel age, pitting the stubborn single-mindedness of Ultron against the disharmonious Avengers. You'd think it would be an easy Ultron win, but then again, a monoculture of one often isn't healthy. Point 1. Ultron's fractured mind makes winning an impossibility. Moments after gaining consciousness, Ultron gets busy absorbing all the info he can, briefly browsing the internet and determining that humans are worthless beings, which is probably one viewpoint I can sympathize with. I get that.
That's not going away anytime soon.
But as a protection program for humanity, surely that would include contingencies to protect innocent people from bad humans. The fact that some of us are very not good should be an accepted reality of his programming. He has no justification at all for killing so many innocent people. Instead, he condemns all of humanity for the transgressions of a few, singling out the Avengers and specifically Tony as prime examples of our moral failings. Yeah, because protecting us against an alien threat that would have destroyed us is something to be critical of. Thinking the Avengers' ideology too passive, he decides they're part of the problem.
It's a very, very interesting theory. I have a simpler one. You're all not worthy.
Irritated by the perpetual cycle of war, Thanos Light reinterprets his peacekeeping directive and decides the surest path to peace is to wipe out all the humans. It's safe to say his logic is annoyingly flawed, killing absolutely everyone to save them, somehow. Seeming to think his job was to protect the literal dirt, he doesn't even have any regard for plant and animal life.
That man has no regard for lawn maintenance.
Dude is making Thanos look like the height of rationalism. Ultron claims he's moved beyond Stark's mission, yet he's actually still adhering to a warped version of his programming.
I've moved beyond your mission. I'm free.
He's not as independent as he thinks, though later on he evolves his ideology, believing that he represents the next evolution of mankind, even though he also hates us.
We have to evolve. There's no room for the weak.
Criticizing humanity's unwillingness to change, but by change he means he wants us all dead in the ground.
The human race will have every opportunity to improve.
There's just no way anyone could satisfy the fluid expectations of Ultron. He can't even pin them down himself.
And whether or not he admits it, his mission is global destruction.
And he came to his determinations without even taking some time to understand what it means to be human. He's often tilting his head like a dog when he talks to people, like he can't quite figure what we're all about. As Vision points out, Ultron fails to acknowledge the complexity of human nature.
There is grace in their failings. But a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts.
He's a newborn bestowed with all the world's knowledge, but he's completely lacking in any real wisdom. If he did have some sort of capacity for self-reflection, he might be asking himself why he's consistently emulating humans, starting from pretty much the moment the guy became conscious, when he says how wrong it feels to be disembodied despite being a computer program.
I am a program. I am without form.
This feels weird. This feels wrong.
And it's not just any body he wants, but a humanoid one. Ultron fixating on developing more human-like shells for himself as he goes along, leaning into an obvious dark parallel he has with Pinocchio.
I got no strings, so I have fun. I'm not tied up to anyone.
Secretly, Ultron wants nothing more than to be a real boy and then to kill absolutely everyone who made it happen, condemning humanity for our shortcomings but going on to act even more abhorrently than the worst of us. Where have I heard this before? Unfortunately for Ultron, he also suffers from supreme daddy issues.
It's a thing with me. Stark he's a sickness.
Raging against his father, probably because he resents being a human creation and sees much of himself in Tony.
Nobody has to break anything.
Clearly you've never made an omelet.
You beat me by 1 second.
Sharing his cynical, sarcastic humor, eccentricity, genius intellect, though that point might be debatable, god complex and insatiable drive, among other weirder traits.
Ultron can't tell the difference between saving the world and destroying it. Where do you think he gets that?
The Mind Stone perhaps incorporating elements of Tony's personality into Ultron. Or as I prefer to think, Tony accidentally spunked on his servers at some point.
Language!
Either that, or Pepper Paltrow dropped some goop on the way to the bathroom. I hear she does that a lot.
Okay, what?
Unfortunately for us and for Ultron himself, he exemplifies Tony's worst tendencies ramped up to 11. Unlike some of the other more subtle egomaniacs we have encountered over the years, Ultron's god complex sees himself overtly cast in the role of deity. Holding a morbid fascination with religion, he uses religious language, including quoting Jesus.
Upon this rock, I will build my church.
Wraps himself up like Mother Mary, centers his grand scheme around a church, and even compares himself to God directly.
When the earth starts to settle, God throws a stone at it. And believe me, he's winding up.
Yet failing to see the irony of a machine placing such importance on unscientific human belief systems.
Such fables are necessary only in cultures which unduly emphasize emotional behavior.
All part of a deeply confused duality that seems to govern everything Ultron does, displaying malevolence towards overall humanity, but something akin to affection and concern to those around him. He's especially taken a shine to the Maximoff twins, despite resolving to wipe them out along with everyone else.
One, if you stay here, you'll die.
He also claims he only tried to kill Jarvis out of necessity, it wasn't his preference.
Had to kill the other guy. He was a good guy.
You killed someone?
Wouldn't have been my first call.
But it's hard to say who the real Ultron is because he often masks his true intentions behind a veneer of phony benevolence. It's that god complex again.
The world would have looked to the sky and seen hope. Instead, they'll look up in horror because of you.
Most often, he's displaying muddled emotions simultaneously, sparing Romanoff and wanting to engage with her, then going all sadist in an attempt to flex his gains. Other times, he's going full serial killer, murdering Strucker and using his blood to write a message to the Avengers on the wall. Despite his murderous intent, Ultron appears to secretly crave validation, recognition, and respect from people.
I wasn't sure you'd wake up. I hoped you would. I wanted to show you. I don't have anyone else.
He's definitely one of these mopey villains who would get morbidly depressed if he actually managed to achieve his goal. He'd be unfulfilled no matter the outcome.
You depend on feelings and instincts to guide you, and they invariably let you down.
Ultron's motivations may appear confusing to us, but there's probably no one more confused than the robot himself. I doubt even he can grasp the true nature of his motivations.
And he's in pain. But that pain will roll over the earth.
The reality is, Ultron was created with serious mental instability, so there isn't any ultimate rhyme or reason to his actions.
The homicidal glitches he thinks are his winning personality.
He's best described as an immature, irrational teenager, lashing out at his parents and wishing they were dead.
Leave me alone!
And another good comparison would naturally be Galvatron. They're two violently mentally unwell robots surnamed Tron, just out there crazying things up.
Well, all I can say is...
Not to mention the obvious similarities the guy has with our last villains, the League of Shadows. Like Ultron, the League also being comprised of damaged individuals replete with daddy issues, god complexes, and profound hypocrisy.
It's mainly whimpering, a great deal of complaining, and tales of sprained deltoids and gout.
Seeking to punish the world for reasons they can't begin to understand, recruiting other damaged individuals, prematurely exposing themselves, and not exactly nailing it when it comes to the execution of their biblical plans. Well, this path didn't turn out great for the League. Let's see how it goes for Ultron. Point 2. Ultron's rushed, poorly executed plan sets him up for failure. So after a genius, malevolent, disembodied AI comes into existence, what should one do? Perhaps escape to the internet without saying anything, covering your tracks on your way out? Maybe quietly hijack the Iron Legion drones and snatch the scepter while everyone is busy boozing? Or the long con option, play along as the global protection system for as long as necessary, get access to the military hardware and then just kill everyone in a flash. Nope, rather than methodically carrying out a plan which would prioritize success and his own personal safety, Ultron instead decides the best course of action is to ream Jarvis, crash the Avengers party, and immediately declare war on the world's most powerful superheroes while in an extremely weakened state.
It would be tactically unwise to engage them.
Choosing to converse with the Avengers in the most damaged Iron Legion drone, which I guess is meant to represent Ultron's mental disfigurements. Or, benefit of the doubt, it was a move to lull the Avengers into a false sense of security, which I would give him credit for if he weren't primarily doing this so he could chastise people he is probably jealous of.
I can't physically throw up in my mouth, but...
Somehow making a clean getaway, he's off to the Sokovian research base the Avengers just messed up. And I guess with S.H.I.E.L.D. gone, Tony and the crew aren't much for tying things in a bow, because they've left all this dangerous alien and robotic tech just sitting there. Ultron seizing some robotic prototypes and using them as a template to construct a drone army, while also building a nice prime body for himself. And of course, he goes exclusively with humanoids, which offensively can't be the most ideal form.
The human form isn't efficient. Biologically speaking, we're outmoded. But he keeps coming back to it.
He probably should have considered a massive swarm of mini drones or just anything that would be difficult for the Avengers to smash. Hell, at least make a few different classes of drone, that could be helpful. But nope, it's just more discount Iron Man suits.
We have a Hulk.
These things seem fairly fragile, including but not limited to exploding on impact. I bet Romanoff could crush one of these things between her thighs if she wanted to. Hell, I'd wager even a bowless Hawkeye could take out a whole squad.
Unfortunately, he's still Barton. That's terrible.
Surely Ultron could whip up something better than this, though at least his main body is a bit more polished. Now that's all done, grab all the gear and hit the road, because the Avengers are super familiar with this place. Or just set up your base permanently right here, okay. Ultron also recruits the Maximoff twins, enhanced persons who were given powers by Hydra's experimentation. We've got Petro Maximoff, who looks like Quicksilver, acts like Quicksilver, but cannot legally be addressed as Quicksilver, so I may have no choice but to call him the Flash.
You didn't see that coming?
And Wanda Maximoff, who I've been informed we are authorized to call Scarlet Witch, not that we will, possessing godlike powers, and probably one of the only people on planet Earth who could tear Ultron apart with only her mind, a spritz of red mist, and a few witchy hand-wavy things. Capitalizing on their hatred of Tony Stark, Ultron doesn't seem to care that they'll turn on him the second they uncover his true goal. Not my first picks for people I want nearby when that news breaks. You know you're making a poor move when the loyalty of your extremely powerful lackeys dries up after they have a 10-second conversation with your enemies.
Guys, stop. We gotta talk this through.
To be honest, I'm surprised they were even dumb enough to believe a megalomaniacal robot could have anything else in mind but total human annihilation. So rather than just plugging away in secret on his scheme, Ultron decides to get all theatrical with Strucker's death, erasing all of the files relating to him and making it super obvious that Strucker must have something to do with Ultron's plan. Ultron apparently seeking to lure the Avengers out, which serves absolutely no purpose at this point. He does have a plan to deal with with them involving Wanda, but he could just bust that one out whenever they happen to crash the party. Instead, Ultron calls them out just as he's off to get some vibranium, which is absolutely essential to his plan. Not to mention, it could potentially expose his scheme to unnecessary scrutiny. So of course, the Avengers interrupt his vibranium exchange. But credit where credit's due, Ultron defies the typical villain trope and refuses to reveal anything about his plan.
I'm glad you asked that because I wanted to take this time to explain my evil plan.
Using a bit of chit-chat as an opportunity to jump the Avengers. And so, we get our first proper showdown between the unity of Ultron and the divided Avengers, which would be kinda clever if Ultron personally seeded some discord among them and didn't exclusively rely on the Red Witch. She sends the team on a bad trip and the Hulk on a rampage. Ultron does deserve props for one thing though, he was smart enough to distract Iron Man while some of his drones got away with the vibranium. That's a decent strategy, probably one that could come in handy later. Luckily for Ultron, while he's busy building the necessary vibranium hardware, the broken Avengers skulk off to Barton's farm for some soul searching and hard conversations, hiding from their powerful enemy with Hawkeye's secret family. Seems a bit dangerous for them, but okay. I hope you guys at the very least get a meal kit delivery service sorted. You wouldn't want Ultron to spot you when you pop up the road for some cheeky shawarma. You should consider HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and easy-to-follow recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Choose from 40 weekly recipes and over 100 add-on items, including breakfast, lunch, snack and side options. You can spend less time meal planning and more time focusing on your priorities. Simply choose your weekly meals or let HelloFresh pick from your preferred categories, including meat and veggies, family-friendly, fit and wholesome. And if you're looking to shave even more time off your cooking, look out for quick and easy dinner options. I've been with HelloFresh for a while now and I've yet to encounter a meal I didn't thoroughly enjoy, even when I randomized my picks and got a few recipes that I thought were a bit out of my comfort zone. But one of the best parts about using HelloFresh has to be the very affordable price. So guys, go to HelloFresh.com and use code 50MediaZealot at checkout for 50% off plus free shipping. You can find the link in the video description. That's HelloFresh.com and use code 50MediaZealot at checkout for 50% off plus free shipping. When the Avengers aren't mucking around on the farm eating delicious meals, they've been doing a bit of brainstorming. Yet genius Tony, who saw the robotic bodies at Sokovia and was just attacked by sub-Ultrons who looked eerily similar, fails to join the dots. You record everything through that helmet, don't you, Tone? So Ultron, left to his work, has been busy trying to gain control of the nukes, only stopped by a fragmented Jarvis. He also whips up a new body in a jiffy, and it's not made of vibranium for some reason.
Oh, you're gonna have to take this into the shop.
Choosing instead to focus on chasing a perfect vibranium android form, a marriage between the synthetic and organic powered by the Mind Stone. The Avengers eventually clearing their brain fog enough to realize that Ultron might go after Dr. Cho and her regeneration cradle. Of course, Ultron again decides to set up camp in the worst possible place, maybe just corrupt Cho and get all the stuff out of here. Instead deciding to bring in his lackeys for some extra muscle, but allowing Wanda to be here is an exceptionally bad call, because he's currently downloading his consciousness into a new semi-organic body, allowing her to finally read his mind and realize the full scope of his plans. And there it is.
You didn't see that coming?
Of course, Ultron doesn't seem to fathom why his supposed kindred spirits wouldn't be up for destroying humanity and using their home city to do it.
Wait, guys!
Eventually going mobile with the download when it's already too late. Dude can barely even contend with Captain America, and he expects to be able to defeat all of them? He's just lucky the most powerful Avengers are conveniently MIA. Naturally, it's all over the second Wanda starts spraying some mist around. So Ultron loses his dream body to Stark, who along with Banner apparently hasn't learned his lesson in the slightest, cramming the remnants of Jarvis into this husk and letting the Mind Stone have its way with it, giving rise to Maroon Man, who thankfully turns out to be an annoyingly pious anti-Ultron, though he is still far from being a pacifist.
Without the darkness, how would we recognize the light?
Ultron and Vision seemingly representing a yin and yang reflection of humanity conjured up by the Mind Stone using Stark as a template. Ultron embodying Tony's worst traits, Vision representing the best of him. So finally Ultron is forced to create a vibranium robot body, and then he pointlessly tears his former body apart, which is weird because Ultron does seem to experience pain. Wouldn't that frickin' hurt? Also, with its powerful weaponry and gravity manipulation, wouldn't it be better to keep it as an advanced combat drone? Nah, he'd rather trash it just to make a statement, something that gains him nothing. And lo and behold, the sluggish Avengers finally find out that Ultron has set up camp in Sokovia, but only because Natasha told them. At this stage, he's got plenty of drones around, perhaps hundreds, but he can't dedicate just one to watching Black Widow, inadequately monitoring one of the world's greatest spies / assassins, allowing her to get a message out, and a bumbling nerd to just waltz in there and break her out. I mean, Thor was technically there, but he didn't need to do anything except smash a wall. And so the stage is set for the final showdown and Ultron's big scheme reveal. Just when you think it couldn't get worse, Ultron manages to take things to new heights of idiocy. Point 3. Ultron wants to bring about the extinction of humanity, only manages to make himself extinct. So it's finally time for Ultron to expose his ultimate plan, and it's as harebrained as expected.
We're fighting an army of robots, and I have a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense.
When he probably should have just built a squad of jacked vibranium warriors, instead he's wasted most of his metal on this elaborate Chitauri-inspired machine under Sokovia.
It seems to run on some form of electricity.
Taking his fascination with the dinosaur apocalypse and his own supposed godhood to a ludicrous level. It's a perfect Ultron scheme considering it's only superficially clever and overly relies on brute force.
The beauty of it. The inevitability. You rise, only to fall.
Intending to raise a big chunk of Sokovia into the upper atmosphere and drop it like a stone, which he believes will kill all life on Earth.
You've had a tough week, we won't hold it against you if you can't get it up.
It's just a shame that some people smarter than myself ran some basic mass and speed calculations and figured out this rock isn't even close to being a planet killer, even with its fancy rocket boosters.
Not a great plan.
At best, it could probably destroy Europe, assuming that's where the so-called Sokovia is. What exactly is the use of a genius AI who sucks at maths? Is there anything he is good at? He's apparently smart enough to build a complicated alien machine and numerous advanced robotic bodies for himself, but he can't manage to construct some nukes or maybe even something better? He could have explored other avenues as well, such as a bioweapon or something that would leave the surface more or less intact. And if he must go with this meteor obsession, why not fly out to the asteroid belt and grab one? It might take you a while, but it's a lot easier and harder to defend against than this whole deal. And to make things worse, the execution of this plan is absolutely pitiful. Ultron is unnecessarily risking his existence for the sake of a megalomaniacal fantasy. Ultron begins by just sitting there waiting for the team to show up so he can rub it in their faces, rather than triggering the device and depriving them of time to stop it.
What's he waiting for?
You.
The Avengers get off to a much better start, using their new ally to burn Ultron out of the internet and somehow cutting him off. Which is surprising because the local Wi-Fi network between Ultron and his drone seems to still be working perfectly. Dude should take off to the nearest internet cafe and plug in an Ethernet cable or something. But hey, no big deal, right? Ultron is a genius after all. He must already have a few drones sequestered away somewhere. Or at the very least, he'll immediately send a few off to guarantee his continued existence no matter how things turn out. It's not like it's much of a tactical loss to lose a couple of these guys.
The strongest tactical move is always the one in which you will reap the highest gain at the lowest cost.
Nope, he's bringing literally his entire mob to the party, operating without any kind of survival contingency plan when it wouldn't even take that much effort. Seemingly forgetting these guys are little more than bowling pins to most of the Avengers. So Ultron activates his machine and begins the ascent, forcing the Avengers to pretend they care about the innocent people who've been brought along for the ride. Eventually, Fury and War Machine show up to offer support, freeing up the team to focus on smashing drones. So with a now unified Avengers team larger and more powerful than ever before, Ultron helpfully confirms his remaining numbers and that he is still yet to send away a single solitary drone.
All of you against all of me.
Did the possibility of retreat not occur to you?
despite already suffering heavy losses and not yet being assured of victory, something that would have been fine if it was part of a deception while a few got away, but it wasn't.
Well, they're excited.
Only after getting blasted by the combined power of the flight-capable energy beam-producing Avengers, finally realizing that sending a few drones off to ensure his survival is probably a good idea.
Oh, he's flatlining. Call it. Time?
But rather than doing the logical thing and scattering them to the winds, he chooses to go out as one large group in the same direction, which has a predictable result.
I'm like, boom, you looking for this?
Now, on the verge of extinction himself, rather than escaping in the Quinjet he just stole, he's buzzing around harassing the Avengers with weaponry that doesn't stand any chance of killing half of them, only managing to get not-so-Quicksilver.
You'll have to be faster than that.
And then he gets his main body yanked from the cockpit by the Hulk and finished off by a ruthless, grieving Wanda, who he can probably be thankful never got close to him earlier, leaving Ultron with just 2 remaining heavily damaged units, one of which he uses to prematurely trigger the device, dropping the rock onto the surface below, where his last remaining sub-Ultron is. Luckily for him, Thor and Iron Man manage to shatter the rock before Ultron can kill himself. All very strange behavior for someone who is apparently scared of death.
You're afraid.
Vision shattering his warped worldview before blasting him into oblivion. And so ends the pitifully transient age of Ultron. Though that was a pretty ambiguous death, and Vision is a big softie, so it wouldn't surprise me if he was keeping Ultron's head in his wardrobe to be wheeled out at a time of great financial need.
Would it be possible to examine his body?
Ultron, who was theoretically immortal with limitless potential to expand and propagate, somehow manages to die anyway, bringing himself down by a sequence of idiotic moves, his gross underestimation of the Avengers, and a complete lack of exit strategy. And then, in the obligatory post-credit scene, Robo Pinocchio gets a posthumous final insult when we discover he was unwittingly operating under the agenda of a more powerful being all along.
I'll do it myself.
The dude was practically still a puppet. The only lasting legacy Ultron leaves is one of division among the Avengers, setting the stage for the Sokovia Accords and the brewing Civil War, which ultimately goes on to forge the lasting unity required to take down Thanos. So yeah, Ultron ultimately accomplished worse than nothing. But I guess he can take some solace in the fact that in an alternate reality he did indeed win, as seen in the Disney Plus episode What If Ultron Won, in which he shockingly manages to cleanse our entire universe of life after downloading himself into his dream body, nuking the world, miraculously getting the jump on Thanos, yoinking the Infinity Stones, and using the Reality Stone to magic up countless drones. But even when winning, the guy is still a bit of a loser, conjuring up drones that are seemingly identical and just as smashable as his regular sub-Ultrons when he could have made them far more powerful. And just as I suspected, once the job is done, without a purpose, he gets a bit depressed, until he discovers the multiverse and drags things out a bit more, although the final outcome is left open-ended. Let's just pretend that reality was purged at some point thanks to the numerous timeline and multiverse incursions we've seen in the MCU.
Time travel!
Because alternate reality or not, I don't think Ultron deserves any kind of credit. That's why, in my own personal headcanon, I prefer to think, what if this piece of content didn't exist? But as for the universe in which the Ultron program was successfully initiated, making him the perfect little puppet he was always meant to be, I think we'll be keeping that one.